Welcome to another edition of the Sales and Marketing Power Hour with your host, Carol Morgan with Denim Marketing and Kimberly Mackey with New Home Solutions Consulting.
I think, guys, Carol and Kevin, if it's okay with you, I think we should probably get started. Let people
Let's
come
rock
on
and
in.
roll.
Let's rock and roll. Let's get her done. So let me trying to do too many things here. Carol, go ahead. Take it. Introduce yourself. Let's get that
Top
out
of the afternoon, you guys. I'm Carol Morgan, founder and president of Denim Marketing, based here in Hotlanta, Georgia, where actually we're really excited to be a little cooler this week. So, cooler is the high 80s instead of the high 90s. So Denim Marketing, we specialize in all things content. So social media, blogging, we still do traditional public relations and score lots of media coverage for our clients. So if you need help with any of those, give me a shout.
And somebody's already shouting out to either Zen or Chance, whoever that is in the backgroround. I can't tell.
That's Zen. He's very Zen today.
He's very Zen. Okay. Yeah. Well, he's usually pretty
He's flat.
Yeah.
Yes. He's not concerned about the housing market.
He is not at all. He says as long as his house is here and nobody's working on it, he's good.
I understand that. So I am Kimberly Mackey, for those of you who don't know, and I am the founder of New Home Solutions Consulting. I like to say that I'm the person who makes sure that sales is the engine that drives the train, rather than running it off the tracks. So I'm an immersion consultant. I go in and work with you with your systems, your processes, procedures, make sure that everything is running in order. Most people think I am a sales trainer, and that's because that's what you mostly see me doing visually. So I do those things, but I also do a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, and happy to help you to be able to navigate the market. This is how you can reach me. So my website and my email are both right there. And then without further ado, Kevin Oakley, who really needs no intro, but Kevin, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? Maybe even something that people don't know about you.
Well, you might know this, but you still need it to be reinforced. And that's that I hate waffles and I love pancakes. And the main reason is that waffles are actually the exact same recipe as pancakes. It just calls for more oil. So who needs more oil in their life? We're all trying to be healthy, trying to be
Are you
careful
trying to convince us that pancakes are health food?
I think so. I don't know about that.
Main thing there. Yeah, no, but I started in the business in 2003, worked for 3 different home building organizations prior to joining my client at Do You Convert. And we work with home building organizations all over the country on online sales and digital marketing and strategy. And my favorite time ever in this business was 2007 to 2012. And so to me, there is a relief in what is happening, and that those of us who've been through this knew that what was to come in some form or fashion. And now that it's here, I'm finding just all of those old muscles that I haven't had to use in a while coming right back. And again, it was fun. And this is going to sound a little dark, but the reason it's fun is I am competitive. Don't play a board game at the Oakley household. There's 6 of us and we're all competitive, but in a down market, it's all about stealing market share, which means you truly are beating your competitor. You're out maneuvering, out strategizing, out executing. And it's fun. It can be fun. And I just think all 3 of us and other folks in the industry who have been through those times, it's just important for everyone to remember that, I think it was Myers who once said, lightning strikes once. Mm-hmm. Getting struck by lightning once is not surprising. So until you can have repeated success in different market conditions, be really careful about crowning yourself an expert in anything, because you're not even sure yet what you don't know. And so hopefully we're just here to provide some value, give you all some encouraging insights and opportunities of how you can outmaneuver this market. But thanks for letting me hang out with you both today.
Yeah, thanks for hanging out with
us. And the 125 plus registries.
I
Yeah.
think we ended up with like 170 or so
Woo,
registered.
crazy.
So, yeah. So,
Well, and I don't know if y'all
so
noticed, Kevin put on this shirt especially to match our graphics when he had his photo taken,
Yeah.
because he matches perfectly. So he's now gotten our most fashionable, celebrity guest award. So, anyone else who's on in the future is going to have to, do as well as Kevin did with their photo.
we might have to get a little plastic trophy or something. So our next Sales and Marketing Power Hour is August 17th. So mark your calendar, stay tuned. In the meantime, of course, we keep the conversation going on our Facebook group, which is Sales Marketing Power Hour. So make sure you join us on there. It's usually a lively conversation. Join in. Drop, this is not a one-way conversation. We want to hear from you. We want to hear what's going on. Ask any questions you want. Share a funny, because we all like to laugh, and we all need a little humor every once in a while too. So I'm going to stop my screen share there, because we're not about PowerPoint slides, but we do have some visuals for you today. So periodically I'll jump those back and forth. So we'll see how those go. But let's talk about the market, because I think people are freaking out about the market. And Kevin, should they be freaking?
No, you should be on high alert. You should be aware. But in terms of what you do with that nervous energy, you got to be really careful. One of the things that in the stock world, they say one of the worst times to make an investment is when you're down.
Mm-hmm.
The irrationality kicks in. And so we're telling ourselves a lot of things that we want to be true, but aren't necessarily true. And any type, actually, this hasn't been that long ago. Remember March of 2020, when the whole world paused and we're all going to become zombies.
Right.
Kind of the same thing that's happening right now. Appointment to sale conversions dropped. A lot of marketers were told, hey, pause advertising. It was a period of reassessment. And if you overreact, then again, it might mean that you haven't been through the last market correction, and understanding that endurance is as important as quickly reacting to the environment. If you're not, if you're trying everything to get back to the same results you had in February of this year right now and expecting that to work, you don't understand the endurance part of what's going to happen. But no, we should not be panicked at all. We should just be aware.
Yeah, throwing stuff out and seeing what sticks is never a good strategy. I mean, there
it's
is
the definition of
strategy to
not
this
having a strategy.
Exactly.
Most of the time.
Exactly. It's a little crazy, but yeah, that's what I see. People are like, oh, well, let's try this. Let's try that. No, breathe, people. Take a minute. You don't need to just throw everything out there. There are some tried and true things that we know are necessities. But the first and foremost is understanding where you are, which is what we're going to talk about today. So, you guys want to talk about the market? Carol, I know you've got some market stats too.
I've got some stats for the Southeast that don't look terrible. So I know everybody's freaking out, which we talk about a lot. And inventory is creeping up a little bit here in Atlanta. I think we're up to 1.4 months of supply, folks. Okay, let's just take that into consideration, right? 1.4. Oh my gosh, the sky must be falling, right? Normal 6 months of supply. I mean, we're still, there's nothing out there. There's nothing for people to buy still. So that's not terrible, but it is creeping up weekly right now. So we got to keep an eye on that. We got a long way to go before we hit normal. And then just looking, I'm reading off my other screen here, pending sales are still close to 2021 and 2019 levels. Until the second and third weeks of June, when the rates, closed in on 6% and the national news got ugly, and the national news, likes to be ugly because they don't want to say anything good. Nobody reads good news, right? So the third week of June, pending sales in the Atlanta market are down about 16% from 2021 and down 8% from our benchmark year of 2019. However, year to date, through the third week of June, we're still 2% up over 2021, and we're still 9% over 2019. So that's kind of the ballpark with real live data that goes through, this month, not just through April or May. And I'll tell you what I'm seeing with our builders is they still just can't can't build them, can't close them fast enough. I don't have anyone that's sitting on a ton of inventory. I don't know about you guys, but most of my builders just don't have any. They're building a few at a time.
I just asked that question to a couple hundred marketers of how many completely finished homes do you have?
Yeah, you have to clarify it with the completely finished.
Yeah, my favorite was Sally Slocum from MI, who said if you went on our website, the number would be 230 something. But if you consider completely finished, meaning it has siding, it has appliances, it has landscaping, we have 4.
Oh, wow.
So, and there really are only 2 kind of buyers for the most part. The feedback we hear from the builders is there are people looking for that completely finished home. Why? Because if you talk to someone who's gone through the construction process, like if you're a buyer and you're thinking about buying an almost finished home, meaning it might be done the next 6 months, and you talk to family, friends, neighbors, coworkers about what their experience has been. I mean, in my own story, I moved into my house in December. My master shower is just now partially complete because they still can't get the hinges that are necessary 6 months later. So they're not getting reinforcement of you should believe the timeline you're being told. And they don't want to be homeless or have to move twice in such a period of uncertainty that we have now. I just want to jump back real quick to Kimberly, to your initial question of, I think one thing that's helpful is when should we start panicking? Well, panic might be too strong a word no matter what, but you should really be concerned when either one, consumers are not coming to your website in large quantities and you're unable to fill that gap with advertising. Because again, in the great financial crisis, there was a period of time where it did not matter how much advertising you did. Consumers were just not interested in shopping. And so that's one thing to watch is if you can't bring them at least to your website. And remember, a lot of people are going to talk about lack of walk-in traffic. Remember to check your watch and your calendar. We still live in 2022, where before they are going to walk in, they are going to visit your site. So that is the main pathway. That's one reason to get really concerned. The second is when you have large numbers of completely finished inventory that are going significantly beyond the average days on market. The average days on market nationally right now is 16 days. So even if you have 15 finished homes, if they've been sitting for less than 2 weeks, now is not the time to overreact.
Yeah. And just make sure it's always a numbers game. You've got to get people through these homes, particularly in some of these tertiary markets where I serve, where, it's a niche buyer. It's not like sitting in, Tampa where I am, where you do have tons of people still coming through. Even though traffic is down, people are still coming through models. But if you've got inventory sitting in some of these tertiary markets, remember, you got to get people to see them. You got to get people to know about them and know that they are there, because right now inventory is down everywhere. I don't care what market, if you're in the hottest market in the world or you're in some of these tertiary markets, there is low inventory everywhere. And people just need to know there is some,
right?
Because there are buyers.
We talked about the 2 places where data would lead you to be concerned, lack of activity on fully finished homes and lack of activity on the website. Internally, what's causing a lot of the stress is ownership looking at the homes under construction that are unsold. And they're looking at a calendar, like a builder I was talking to in Texas, and they said, we're going to have 120 homes completely done in October. Whereas historically right now, they might have 20-ish done every month that the team is allowed to sell. And my first thought is, are those really going to be done all in October? Yeah. I mean, if you've been in this industry for a while, you know that from a construction standpoint, if you're only able to finish in quality walk and turn over 20 homes on average a month, your team is not going to suddenly magically out of thin air have 100 homes that they're going to turn to the sales team and say they're 100% done, and they really will be. So that's one stress. And the other stress is a salesperson who is just full of recency bias, thinking I used to write this many contracts, or I used to see this many people. And so those are the internal emotional sources of stress that are separate from the data that we need to be watching.
Yeah, I think our industry, we've told people this is coming. We've told them it's coming. I know you've been preaching it. And if anybody follows you on Twitter, they see it. You're providing the data. Carol's been talking to her clients about it. And, it took about 6 weeks longer than we all predicted it would. All timed based on, the war in Ukraine threw the whole monkey wrench in there. And then when the Fed jumped those rates like they did, as quickly as they did. but there's shock. And Carol, you even have some data to show that, the first 2 weeks after every one of these interest increases, things slow down.
Yeah.
Pause. The web traffic didn't necessarily pause, but the traffic paused. And then those people who are still trying to buy a home, they're like, okay, wait, let's stop panicking. Let's think this through. It's only going to go up for a while. So maybe we better go ahead and make our move.
Right. Well, I think the big thing is just marketing and education. We talked a little bit about this pre-show, people who just pulled the plug on marketing. So we have so many leads. We got so many this, now is the time to reevaluate, what have you been doing with your marketing for the last 2 or 3 years? Did you turn off that train? Time to start again, folks.
Well,
and Zen agrees.
Yeah, he agrees. Yeah. That's him saying more. I posted a tongue-in-cheek meme, and I know it's sensitive topic, but the other day where, a lot of people, to your point, Carol, they stopped advertising, which is okay, but you still have to keep marketing. But their decision on how they were going to market was going to 100% move towards an all online digital transaction where the consumer will always beat down your door and just, please let me push that button. And so the meme was, a play on words of, you said buy now would save us. And then the little cat just says, no, I meant buy now. Like,
that's cute.
Go get to work on the rest of marketing, not just overly focus on technology.
And I would love to say that there's builders who just turned off their advertising, but I've been to websites recently that haven't been posted on in 2 years. There's no blogs, there's no updates. You go to content. Facebook pages, there's no content. It's reminiscent of the first, Great Recession. And, anyone who remembers that's going to go to those pages and think, oh, this builder didn't make it through, COVID. They're not even viable anymore. So
same thing with the salespeople that turned off, they're not out doing their grassroots. They're not working on referrals. I mean, when's the last time a salesperson asked for a referral from a customer that they just poo-pooed through the process and went, look, this is what we got. You either take it or you leave it. Sorry. And and I'm not blaming salespeople because they did check out. Yeah. And it got hard and they were being beaten up and it was a tough time to be a salesperson. Yeah. I get all that, but how are you going to go and ask for a referral when you didn't start with the relationship?
Right.
And then realtors. Wait.
Oh, wait. Should we be nice to
what
them?
are those people? Yeah. These are the people that we're going to cut their commission out and tell them
I'm seeing those go up now.
Yeah.
Yeah. And those and I'm getting flyer after flyer after flyer in my inbox saying, the rates we're raising, we're going to pay you bonuses. We're going to do, let's think next time, because this market's going to go up. It's going to go down. It's going to go sideways. It's going to twist around on its ear. You don't have to knee jerk this stuff.
Well, the last thing before we start getting into some of the data, because I know we got a lot to talk through, is in this current environment, setting your expectation of you or your team doing anything, again, that is going to suddenly go from, maybe you were selling 50 or 100 homes a month, and now you're selling 10 or 12. There is almost nothing. There is nothing you're going to do that is going to bring back the 50 to 100 a month right now. Now, there are a very small number of builders who they just never raise prices to the extreme level that other builders have. And those builders are still doing great overall, but that's a very few minority. For the most part, you have to understand that you're going to have to start thinking like a scientist and look at the numbers and start incrementally doing scientific experiments in 2 to 4 week sprints to figure out how to match the messaging to the market and the positioning to the market. And then once you figure out that answer, then you step on the gas and keep bringing in more traffic with the ads.
The other part of this is nurturing the pipeline that you have and not cutting off that pipeline that you already have. If you have not been nurturing that pipeline, they've got questions. We got to understand mortgages right now. And when's the last time you took your mortgage broker to lunch and really understood what are the options? What are my choices and products? And what does that mean for my buyer? Not just doing the mortgage calculator, which I say the words mortgage calculator, and some salespeople look at me like I've grown 2 heads. They're like, mortgage what? And then I really blow their mind and I start talking about rent to ownership versus ownership calculators. Yeah. And they're like, what?
There's only one group of people that is, let me just say it this way. The most depressed group of individuals right now are mortgage brokers and agents, because their world has completely been turned upside down.
There's no refis.
And so, think about all the energy, both from marketing, online sales, and sales that it takes to get the customer to the point of saying, okay, let's look at this. And if you don't cover any of the financing with them and help them understand some of this before you pass it off, you're sending them to an emotional black hole where, like, if they don't come in up here with some education, the person sitting across the desk from them is probably not going to push their emotional limit any higher. So it's something else that, again, we just haven't spent a lot of time training and helping salespeople understand how to discuss financing. And that's going to have to change.
Yeah.
It
more that
should
education.
have, that we lived on that in the previous, Great Recession.
Yeah.
You had to figure this stuff out because, all of a sudden, all of the loan programs that everybody had gotten so comfortable just went poof overnight, they were gone. And we had to, I remember one time I said to my, as a sales manager, I said to my loan officer for our division, hey, what about FHA? And he went, FHA? We haven't used FHA. And I'm like, well, it might be time to dust that puppy off. Let's look at this because, we were the debt to incomes were getting a little out of whack.
Mm-hmm.
And we could go higher if we use the FHA products. So, a good salesperson, a good sales leader, can suggest these types of things and run numbers multiple ways to make sales happen. The biggest fear right now is, I can no longer qualify because I've listened to the media. No, there are other programs out there. So there are ways, guys, you can get this to happen.
Yeah. Well, if we want to talk marketing, I think we've already talked about Kevin's most important numbers and what they mean. Let's talk a little bit about conversions, because I think conversions are still confusing and people don't really understand them. So you want to give us a little overview there, Kevin?
Well, one of the most common things that we see people struggling with is, and do you convert? We don't do this, but it's a standard practice for people who aren't as used to new home marketing to set up conversion activities on your site that are informing what marketing is working and doing, but doesn't mean conversion in the way that I use the word. Meaning, if I don't have contact information in the CRM system, that person doesn't exist to me as a marketer. So that when I talk about a conversion event occurring on your website, I mean something where you have contact information, or in the case of a phone call, where a large percent of the time you're going to get contact information and you're using ways to track that call volume and activity to watch that. But compared to 2021, the aggregate data set that we look at it, do you convert among roughly $16 billion a year in revenue of different organizations, is that website activity is up the last 30 days compared to the same time period in 2021, about 2.5% to 3%. Now that might surprise a lot of you, but that gap is really, we're at negative about 25 to 35% on the organic side, which is your best form of traffic, most likely to convert, most likely to purchase. And we're supplementing that finally with ad spend. And so the volume, again, that's the good news, is when you spend the ad dollars and no one even comes to the website, that's when you start, sweating a little bit. But that's not happening. They're still willing to come take a look at what we have to offer. And that's good, because as long as they keep coming back to look at what we have to offer, we can keep adjusting things to try to get conversions. And that's where a lot of the pain is being felt. And Kimberly's got the slide up there. Year over year, we're down almost 17% in lead volume. Now, again, though, you look at those numbers, there's 104,000 conversions that have occurred on these home builders websites in the last 30 days. That's still a lot of people willing to give out contact information. And again, there's lots of numbers, and we're going to go sometimes even for me, numbers make my head hurt a little bit. But the important thing is, even though that conversion number is down, what should be occurring next, because remember, these are all leads. From a lead to appointment perspective, the number of people who reach out to you, call, text, chat, schedule a U-tour, whatever, the lead to appointment ratio should be going higher. It's just the law of large numbers. The bigger the number of people, the average quality of those leads will be lower, because you're just talking about a bigger pool. So those who are in today's market saying, I'm going to start this process, despite all the things I hear, read, and understand, they should be going to an appointment at a higher rate. If they're not, there's things to check and inspect there. That doesn't mean that those appointments are going to convert to sales at a higher rate, but we should be seeing at least lead to appointment going higher. So despite the fact that those are lower, a lot of the feedback we hear from online sales is, yeah, things are a little bit slower on the inbound side. But one, I finally have time to do outbound activities again and start to actually listen and talk and engage with these customers. And the second is, for the most part, they're still very willing to continue on through the process, in some cases even faster than they were the previous 30 days, because they, like you were talking about, the market gets shocked by a change, especially a sudden change in interest rates. And it takes about 2 to 3 weeks for that to normalize. And it's hard to see on these graphs because there's so many line movements up and down by day of the week. But we tend to see that where if web activity takes a dive, it tends to recover about 2 to 3 weeks later, not always to a higher high, but it doesn't just keep dropping at the same speed that it was when the initial shock happened.
Now, does this take into account too that someone's website actually has strong calls to action? When they get there, there's something to look at. There's an interactive floor plan. There's something to do on that website.
Oh, that's an idea.
What?
Well, okay. Yeah. And I love doing this kind of stuff. And I also am always thinking in my mind of all the messages I'm going to get or ways I'll be misquoted. So here, I'll tee up my haters. Here's one way you can misquote me. But marketers and owners tend to love to poke their finger at the advertising source and say, this is or is not a good advertising source. And there's some things in data you should be looking at to determine what sources are providing you better quality traffic. However, at the end of the day, the most important thing, unless you're buying leads from Zillow or Realtor or somewhere else, and they're not going to your site, your website is ultimately to blame. And it's not just the UI, it's what you're putting on the website in terms of pricing, availability, transparency of information and data. But to just say, well, this medium, this advertising medium doesn't work, like, that's interesting. And that's the beauty of having aggregate data sets is we can go, but it does for 95% of the other builders.
Right.
But, so your own website is something you have complete control over. And one of the things you have to do in any market like this, where you're feeling like the world is spinning out of your control, is say, I have 100% control of what goes on my site, including the ability to lie. Not that I would recommend you do that, but you even could, because it's completely under your control. There will be consequences for it, but you get to change anything and everything about what is on that website. And
you have to think like a buyer too with that website.
Yeah. And buyers are more, so I talked to someone on a call on Monday, and they said they worked a Parade of Homes event, and a prospect went through and was just gushing over this builder's homes and plans and everything. And they were like, we are absolutely going to buy a home from you. And we've been on your website for the last 3 or 4 months for hours at a time, researching floor plans. This is a semi-custom custom builder, but they had never come out until the Parade of Homes. Why? Because that builder doesn't offer the ability to come out. It's still by appointment only. And I reckon I correlate that to, trying to hit a home run with every swing. We could get away with that in 2021. But as demand and buyer psychology shifts, as marketers and salespeople, we have to be more patient, understand that if we can't get the sale, remember this, if you can't get the sale, get the next appointment. Well,
Right.
What is that? I mean, and if I can't get the next appointment, I have to have a reason for the follow-up. And if I can't get any of that, I got to at least get registration information in the system, so I have the opportunity to follow up. All that is, it requires more patience at a time of higher stress. That's what makes it so hard. Like, I got to get a sale now. And if you focus on those activities that would hit a home run, you're more likely to fail. And I guess it's not that dissimilar to my golf game. I used to be good at golf until I actually started thinking about golf, and now I'm terrible and I just don't want to play anymore, right? Because I'm overthinking it, or I'm trying to hit every shot perfectly instead of just making sure I get the club on the ball and it's going forward.
Right. Very interesting.
And this is a time where people try, because they have been closing on first appointments, what we used to call floor pop. or every person came in the door. Oh, we were just putting them on a wait list and they were lucky to buy. It is time to remember that we have to go back and we have to nurture and we have to start with relationship first with these people in order to make that conversion. And you're not going to always close them the first visit. So that's why we have be-back appointments, preferably. But
yeah, I remember pre-pandemic, and Jeff Shore used to do, I'm not sure if he's redone this, but I remember he did this study and found out that there really was no such thing as a fourth or fifth appointment if they weren't going to buy after the second or third. But there's this bias of what appointment do you think people typically purchase on? And then he asked them, the last sale you made, which appointment did they buy on? And it was most often, I believe, the second appointment.
Interesting.
And so if we're reverting back to that, but psychologically, your salesperson feels like if they gave the best presentation and overcame objections and asked for the sale and the buyer said no, recent habit says, what's the pop song? Okay, thank you, next. Right? Like, thank you, next.
Right.
Come on in. Instead of understanding that person might be your best prospect, and you just need to continue to nurture and follow up and stay
Cultivate.
connected.
Yeah. Cultivate. Well, Kimberly has her conversion slide up here.
So, well, this is a tool called from Traction, and I use Traction a lot. It's from Gino Wickman. If you haven't read the book, I use 90IO, and I actually have a link that for anybody who's interested in setting up their metrics so they can understand it with goal, average, and then we track it on a weekly basis. But Kevin, I put these particular numbers up. This is a newer builder of mine that we just built some of this for. So they don't have all of the data in. So I don't want anybody to panic when they see that, wait, there's 0% there. So we are still building, but these are the things that we're tracking. So web sessions and trying, for them to understand what are those web sessions, the percentage of new users on their site. So you can see, what the average is. Again, trying to figure out what's the goal. We don't know what is that goal. And for each builder, it's a little bit different. Then our goal conversions, the goal conversion ratio, something is askew that with their interactive floor plan data migrating where it's supposed to. So that is being addressed. But interactive floor plan sessions and having the data from those it's so valuable.
Yeah. And what people like to ask a lot is, what is the one metric, or if I'm going to compare myself to another builder, what is the one data point? And there is no single data point, because any data point outside of context with another connected data point is meaningless. Right. It's like, again, I spend a lot of time watching macroeconomic data to try to help builders stay ahead of what's going on. And this one economist keeps bragging to his audience that his portfolio is up 1,100% in the last 6 months. So you should listen to his advice. Like, that's a meaningless stat, because unless I have the percentage connected to how much money is invested, like if you only put $100 in some high risky thing and it went up 1,100%, am I impressed? No, you have to have a data point connected with another data point. And cost per lead is one of those things that's kind of a hot button right now. Is what should my cost per lead be, Kevin? Or am I doing better in comparison? And you can game that. Marketers can game that. We can create Facebook lead ads and get $2 leads all day long that aren't going to go through this process like you're talking about. You can compare yourself to a national builder whose average cost per lead still is $20.
Right.
But 80% of their leads are coming just from Florida, Texas, and Utah. And all the rest of them, their average cost per lead is $500, but blended in, they're getting $5 a lead in Florida and Texas at high volume. And so you're like, man, I must suck if my cost per lead is 100.
Right.
No.
Historically, it's been 500. So
oh yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, the most important thing is to be tracking web activity, lead volume. You can get some of the, like your interactive floor plan sessions is an interesting metric to look at and tells you something. So it's not irrelevant, but if there's one data point on this sheet that would have a 0 in it because due to lack of data, it's kind of, I'm okay with that one in comparison to knowing how many leads do I have and how many website users do I have as a starting point.
What I like about the interactive floor plans, and particularly if you're using a CRM, and I'm going to go on a little, this is one of those where I can get misquoted, but I don't even care at this point. I've been on a binge over this. You need a CRM that integrates with your website. You need to know which of your buyers is coming back on that website and what they're looking at and when they're looking at it. You need to have all of that connected. If you don't have that, I could manage your leads with a spreadsheet better than I can your operating system.
Right.
So if you're using, and I'm going to call them, I'm going to call a couple of them out by name, but particularly Builder Trend, listen to me, Builder Trend. I love you. I absolutely love the Builder Trend product, and I encourage my builders, and I get in there and help them use your product. But you're not a CRM. And I've got so many builders, my smaller builders, they're like, well, they told me it was a CRM. No, there's a difference. You've got to, in order to have any of this have some meaning, you've got to know what's happening behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. And if you don't have an interactive CRM that gives you that data, then, you know, you are not going to be able to have any useful knowledge of where your buyers are coming from. So we should never put all of our eggs in one basket. I've got builders who wanted, oh, well, we just list all our homes on the MLS. Good. I'm glad you do. I hope you put your to-be-builts on there too, because it'll help you with your appraisals, because those are tanking too. But that shouldn't be your only lead source. You know, they've got to come from multiple places, and your website can have that. If you think like a buyer and you think location, product, you know, you've got to have the information on there and those strong calls to action.
Yep. And the data, again, this is one of the big things I like to talk a lot about, is because we've now went from talking not about data at all 10 years ago in forums like this as much, to now talking so much about look at the data, and the data needs to inform your decision-making process. And you might even disagree with me, and it's okay if you do, but I'm not okay with the data making the decision for you. You still have to use your brain. And what I mean by that is the data might say that a particular part of this process needs to be addressed. But what we've seen, again, is that builders who have rolled out large interest rate promotions or buy down programs, based upon the data saying that everything is more or less working except for appointment to sale is dropped. And then we ask the salespeople, what do you need? We need a better interest rate. You give that to them, and shockingly, your sales rate does not increase by 100%. You get incremental sales based upon individual stories, but the data, so that's, again, thinking about it scientifically and saying, we think this is what the data informs, and it rules out a whole lot of things that now we don't have to consider. But within that, don't just say there's only one answer here. You do have to use your brain and continue to think, because Carol was talking about before, there's builders who said, just cut the advertising because the data says I'm not seeing as much from a particular advertising source, without understanding that it's going to impact your organic traffic too. And you love that.
Right. Absolutely. You know? It's all connected.
Yeah. I think when we get too myopic over any of these figures, again, it is looking at it as an aggregate, and and you can't just take you can't go, oh, in 3 weeks it did this. This is over time. I think that's an important thing for people to remember. You've really got to stretch this out and look at it over time. So some of the times when I'm building traction for people, you know, we don't have the number, and I'm like, I don't know this number yet. It's going to take us a couple of months before we ever start even guessing at what this number is for you, because you've just never tracked it. Mm-hmm. So we don't know what the goal of it is. Let's look, what's the actual, and then let's look, how can we incrementally improve that?
Yeah. If you want to get, I guess the word is trigger me. It's what the kids say these days, right? If you want to trigger me, ask me the question like this, which is, why is this Wednesday's traffic or sales activity so much different than last Wednesday? You're looking at a 24-hour period of time and comparing it to a previous 24-hour period of time. Who the heck knows?
Who cares?
What's going on?
You know, and you might be able to figure out why, but yeah, that's frustrating.
Yeah, and a quick fun story, because I love telling stories. We're working with a builder in Guatemala City, and talking to them, and their lead volume is increased. Things are great there, but their on-site appointment volume is down. And I said, well, tell me why. And they said, we had a bunch of rain, and the main road into the community is impassable due to a giant sinkhole.
Oh.
And we have no way of fixing said sinkhole until the government decides to fix it. And this is a second or third world country, and so it might be a while. So no matter
Oops.
what you're dealing with right now, it's probably not like that.
You don't have a sinkhole.
If you can still drive to
Yeah.
your neighborhood, you're one ahead of these folks.
Yeah.
That puts
Kevin,
things in perspective, doesn't it?
yeah. Yeah, you touched on something that I think is huge. Metrics, you need to look at a month over month, but year over year so that you can see that seasonality and see that, the cycles that are involved. And
actually, you can take almost any chart, not even about housing. You can look at employment data, statistics. And if you just sliced out 2020 and 2021 and then sandwich those lines back together, the really interesting thing is 9 times out of 10, you would never know that something was missing.
right.
Because it's almost like it's just gone back to where it was in 2019 and slightly higher or lower, depending on what metric you're looking at.
So we
so that
talked
just
about the
means-
historic though, but then how do you take those numbers? Let's slice out 21 and 20 for sure, because those are just anomalies. We know that. How do we take that data and then predict
Right.
and look at what's going to happen? Because that's the crux of what we're talking about here today.
Yeah. My favorite way to do that is to look at the last 90 days worth of data. 90 days and 30 days in this current period is what I'd look at. I'd look at both. And I would look at your trend on all those metrics: web activity, lead volume, appointment volume, and sale volume. And then I would think forward and again, use my brain in addition to the data and say, like July, it's an interesting month coming up. I'm excited for it. Lots of good pool time and vacations to be had for everyone, hopefully. But it usually kind of sucks to sell homes in July in our industry. And my joke has always been June or July, one of those 2 months is going to suck. I just don't know which one. In a normal cyclical seasonality that we have, one of those 2 months is tougher. And great sales organizations will get their sales goals aligned with those realities. And that's all I'm really saying is you take the last 90 days and the last 30, look at the trends, and then say, hey, my website traffic to lead ratio used to be 2%. Now it's 1.5 in June. What do I think it's going to be in July and August? Well, probably going to be a little bit lower. So when you're forecasting, you take those historical trends and then you forecast into the future. And then the math is just going to bubble up and say, this is the amount of traffic you need. But it's all based upon what you believe that future, again, is your sales team, do you have a big incentive or promotion that you believe is going to increase appointment to sale ratios? Then factor that in, and maybe that can outweigh the lower lead volume that you're likely to experience in July, unless you do a big adjustment in how you're marketing and advertising. So it's all about your assumptions. And that's probably the most important conversation to have as a leadership team, so that you get everyone's perspective versus just one of you sitting in a room and saying, like if marketing does this without talking to the sales management and getting their buy-in that they think their team can hit an 8% appointment to sale ratio in July or 12, whatever it is, then it just, to steal from other great people in our industry, like Jeff Shore says, the whole path kind of rolls out right in front of you, not to sell a home, but to how do you market and look at the sales process that's necessary to get there.
Yeah. And that's where we get into pipelines too, which we'll get into in a few minutes, but you can literally map this stuff out, guys, and see how everybody's moving through if you utilize that.
As you pull that up, too, I think is really interesting that you have to know who you work for, whether that's a division president or an owner, and understand their perspective on things. I just right before this got off a call with a builder in the based out of the Virginia market, and their ownership has been around a long time, and they think like an investor. And so she gave this presentation on the state of the market and how they were doing and how they needed to focus on conversions and appointments versus just traffic, and got a big high five from the owner after the meeting. Hey, great job. And then the owner said, but traffic. And her initial reaction was, I thought he said I did a good job, but he didn't seem to listen to what I was telling him. I said, no, this is an investor. And so what he's saying is he really liked your presentation. He trusts your ability. He thinks you're smart. And he's saying, show me the numbers. So Kimberly, what we were talking about in terms of forecasting, you can do 3 different forecasted models and present it to the owner. And I mean, sometimes people get surprised if you tell your ownership, we need to invest 20 grand between price adjustments, ad spend, website improvements, visualization tools, whatever. And based upon this forecasted trend. This is what I think we would get as a result. There's a bunch of owners who would say, okay, no problem, that you would maybe not expect would do that if you didn't put in the work and show it to them in that way.
Yeah, and give them choices. And exactly, most of the leadership that I deal with, they're, first of all, they're high drivers, but they have enough analytical in them. So, but you get your 3 points that you're going to get across. So you better make those 3 points count. And it is, I think we should do this. This is why, and this is the result. And, it's too often we go in with this scattershot approach where we're just throwing everything. And well, if we try this and we try that, and we're just throwing suggestions, well thought out plan.
And what you tend to hear
this is why, and here's the result.
And as people within a home building organization get worn down by the stress of it all, what people like me tend to start hearing is, what do they expect me to do? Well, what they expect you to do is to continue to tell them a better story with the data, to give them an opportunity to make a final decision. But if you just keep showing up with a shrugging motion, what do you expect me to do? It's not going to be a long tenure, probably, in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
Well, and coming from the sales side, so marketers tend to geek out over all these numbers. I know
we love numbers.
You love the numbers, but on the sales side, our salespeople are like, it's like going over their head. It's like talking marketing number or talking mortgage numbers and all of that with them. But as a sales leader and a top producing salesperson, if you don't understand the data, you don't understand your numbers, your tenure in this business is not going to be very long. And I mean, that was something that I sort of figured out in this industry very early on. And I was one of those, it was, here's the keys, Mackey, go sell something. I figured out right, okay, this is how many realtors I need. These are how many appointments I need. I was like, how do I make this work? And fortunately I came from a business background, so I already had that exposure. This is some sales from that same, this is the same app. The app is 90IO, and there's a link down here, Linktree. I put it in my Linktree because my link to it is kind of ugly. But you can find it right there on my Linktree. It's actually at the bottom of it, of where I share valuable links, like registering for Power Hour, for instance. So anything that has ugly URLs, I tend to put it there. Realtor meetings, what is the goal for your sales team? If we're talking about sales numbers, are you tracking it? How are they doing against goal? So I think it's one thing to track it. If I have a builder who doesn't have a CRM, first of all, that's going to be high on my list on their SWOT of a weakness that we've got to address right away. But I will use what I call planned encounter forms. So we're going to track how many realtors did you see? What was who were they, and what was the result? We're going to track that weekly. Appointments. How many appointments are your OSCs making? But also salespeople need to make appointments. So we actually split for this builder. We expect the OSC to schedule half of the appointments, and we expect the on-site agent to actually schedule half of her appointments as well. So, and again, this is a smaller builder, but the goal here is the 10 leads. As Kevin was talking earlier, your 10% conversion rate. So you need 10 leads at any level of qualification, 5 first appointments, 2 be back, that third appointment that we were talking about before, which will give you 1 sale per week. And if your salesperson takes 2 weeks vacation a year, that's 50 sales a year. So it's 1 sale per week. So 4 a month. Yeah. And in order to get there, these are the numbers that we're tracking, along with some others, but these to me are the ones that really stand out, gross sales and cans and net sales, that lead to sale closing ratio. As you can see, we're a little low on that one.
Yeah. And I see you've got online sales counselor, sales and I guess in conversions on here. How important, are those online sales counselors appointments, and what should we expect from our online sales counselors? And, we talked about this a little bit before we went live today, but, again, I know builders that got rid of all their online sales counselors because they had so many leads, they didn't need them. So how about a reality check on that? Where are we with that, and what should we be expecting from them? And these builders who, chopped their hand off, as far as I can tell. What's
Yeah.
the best step for them?
One of my favorite things to try to reinforce to everyone right now is that the online sales position existed in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, but it didn't come into prominence until around 2009. And it was not a role that was ever designed to be the sifter of so much activity that we need to figure out who's worthy of going through. Online sales became a crucial part to home builders' lives exactly because there were not enough leads to go around. Just again, say it again to try and reinforce. Online sales grew as a position in our industry when there were not enough leads. Why? Because every single phone call was worth having a dedicated person ready to answer so that you never miss them.
Right.
Because the speed of response lets you steal market share from another builder who was slower. And so those appointments are incredibly valuable. But again, it's the speed of response and getting that response in a market where there is not an unlimited amount of leads that makes this position so important. And so one of the things that, and all this ebbs and flows, right? It's a balancing act. But one of the things that Jesse and Jen Barkin and Mike Lyon all are talking about with our builders is, for the online sales position right now, when in doubt, send them out. Again, because of the law of numbers, when there's fewer leads, by definition, they should be higher quality. And as long as we're covering the very basics and making sure that they don't think they're about to go visit you to rent a home or to buy a shed for their backyard, if they want to come out and you have pricing on your website, you let them come out. And that's where, as sales management, we have to be really quick. If there's any sense of, I don't know why I got that appointment, it's because it was that or no appointment. And again, the areas of qualification, we still want to cover them if we can, but when in doubt, send them out, because we have to have that opportunity. Again, the consumer is more nervous. And if we can get them to come out in an environment where they generally are more nervous, that's a good thing.
At least give your salesperson an at-bat.
So this is my other favorite story that's going to blow someone's minds. But again, I think people like sometimes hearing stories about how other builders are screwed up too. And by the way, we're all screwed up. We're all screwed up people by definition, right? Humans equals imperfection.
Sure.
So if you got humans at your company, you got some imperfections. But an on your lot builder, a salesperson asked if they could cancel their educational event for the weekend that they hold on, I think, a monthly or biweekly basis. And they wanted to cancel it on a Wednesday for it was coming up on that weekend due to lack of interest. And the marketer said, okay, tell me about this lack of interest. And the answer was, well, I only have 6 families who have RSVP.
Oh,
Now,
wow.
that's not even the most ironic part. The most ironic part is that regardless of what happens with that event occurring or not occurring, that salesperson is working in the model that Saturday. And so what that means is that this perspective of this individual was, I don't want to talk to 6 tire kickers or 6 people who just want some information and to be educated about this on your lot process. I would rather sit here and only have one person who's serious show up and write that sale. Completely oblivious to the potential opportunity that no one will walk in. And if they are, they'll be just as unqualified in that person's mind as the people who would have attended that event. But that's real life.
Crazy.
That's what's happening right now.
6 people who are willing to sign up for an event
and go to it.
This is how skewed our perspective has gotten.
This is an in-person
and I'll take
event.
6. To me, I don't need to be in front of hundreds of people whenever I go out and do a presentation. If I've got 5 really strong, qualified sales leaders, people who can make decisions, put me in front of that group.
Yeah.
Versus a group of 300 people who could care less of what I have to say.
The one thing, because I know we're going to run short on time and we can open up for Q&A. So put questions in the comments and we'll address them. But another interesting thing about how math works, and again, I hate math. It's like I hate making my bed, but my wife says it must be done, and I'm telling you that the math must be done here too. Is if your conversion ratio on appointment to sale is typically 10%, and because the market gets tougher, or your homes are overpriced, or whatever it is, your conversion ratio drops from 10% to 6%. That means instead of 10 appointments to get one sale, you now need 17 appointments, which is almost double in a market condition that is tougher. But if you keep working the math all the way up to website traffic that you need to get those 17 appointments versus 10, you actually have to increase website activity by 66% at that community or for that home in order to get those additional opportunities in leads to get the 17 appointments that you need instead of 10. So that appointment to sale ratio, if you really said, I'm not letting you leave this room until you pick a single metric, ironically, it's not even a marketing metric because that ratio is everything. It's a summation of your product positioning, your price point, your messaging, your advertising. Everything leads up to that moment where they're sitting in front of the sales counselor and they ask them to purchase. And if less than 1 out of 10 are saying yes, then everything else becomes not just slightly less efficient. Again, website activity having to increase by 66% means that it becomes way less efficient with small changes in that appointment to sale number. And so that means that yes, sales trainers are worth it. Yes, competitive analysis is worth it. Yes, market research is worth it. Yes, talking about position your company correctly from a PR perspective is where all those things are worth it because they all lead down to that appointment to sale.
And you can't just look at appointment to sale and say I've got a bad salesperson.
Right. No.
You absolutely can. And there have been builders that I've taken that metric away from them. I'm like, you're not ready for this. It's like, you can't handle the truth because you've got to look at, you might have 100 leads coming through the door or 100 traffic coming through the door, but 95 of them can't buy because they can't afford your product. So why are you driving the wrong kind of traffic? Or you just happen to be in a location that people are, they're coming because it's a touristy destination. I mean, there's so much that goes into this.
And a lot has been talked about.
Just look at these in a vacuum.
Sales and marketing teams starting to not be as simpatico anymore. Fingers starting to be pointed in different ways. And this is where, marketing needs salespeople to be their fingertips. We have to know what's happening on the ground, get all the feedback of what's going on that they can provide. We need them to put everything in the CRM system so we can analyze the data. But similarly, marketers need to have salespeople's back in those. You don't just sit back and like let the owner or the sales manager, whatever, just rip on a salesperson. If you know in your own mind that they don't really have the best opportunity yet, and that's your opportunity to in some form jump in front of that bullet and take it and say, no, I haven't provided enough of the right kind of buyer, but here's the challenges I have in getting them. I either need more budget or I need shifted messaging or the price point is not competitive compared to the marketplace. If you want to keep sales and marketing working together, that's the type of interaction that needs to happen. Because you're right, Kimberly, a lot of people at the top want things to be relatively simple. And so they see that change in appointment to sale. And the easy answer is you screwed up. Right. You've gotten lazy, but that's not necessarily the case. And ultimately appointment to sale is as much an indication as is the amount of advertised incentive that you are offering. This is, again, people hate me for this. Advertised promotions and incentives are letting the whole marketplace understand that you were wrong about your pricing and positioning of your product. It's saying, whoops, we were wrong. We didn't get this right. A really bad appointment to sale ratio means as much that leadership is to blame as the salesperson is, in my opinion.
Yeah, you have to look at all of it. One of the things that we are unfortunately out of time for, but I'm gonna go ahead and maybe we'll do another whole thing on the value of pipelines. If you have a CRM, if you're using a HubSpot or a Salesforce or Zoho, I mean, there's a whole list of them. They have a predictive pipeline, and you move your A and your B prospects through the stages of the sale. If you don't have a visual of that, and you can make a pipeline for everything. I mean, I'm working with builders to manage their entire business through the pipeline with their build process and everything else. Pipelines are so incredibly valuable, but they are undervalued in the sales department. Mm-hmm. And I'm just going to put a plug in right now that if your CRM doesn't, and a lot of our industry CRMs, unfortunately, don't have them, make your own. If you're going to use one, I love our industry CRMs, and I'm pushing them to build those pipelines in. And I know it's in the works for one of our larger ones, but we got to have that pipeline. We got to be able to predict where are these people? Where are they in the buying process? And as a salesperson, my salespeople get so excited as they get to click and drag their prospects through this because they can see how many sales they're going to have this month, next month, and the month after. So we can predict our sales pace at least 3 months. And for some of my builders, because it's, they're on your site or it's a very niche product, we can actually predict it longer, but at least 90 days worth of sales you should be able to predict.
And I think the clarifying point there, I would say is that you can predict in mass, meaning when you have those numbers, you can make predictions. I agree with you. You can forecast pretty well. Individually, and this is sometimes what marketers get messed up with when it comes to marketing automation, is they think that means that I can look at Carol and predict what her specifically is going to do in the next 60 days. And I'm just telling you, you can't. Again, she's a human being, which means by definition,
it's an X factor.
I mean, I guess I should talk about myself. I'm a human being, which means by definition, I am irrational. And so you cannot predict what's going to happen because not only am I irrational, I live with an irrational woman named Melanie. She's my wife. She's also irrational. My kids are irrational. And so in group, the math does work and you can predict, but individually, especially early on in the process, prediction on an individual lead is incredibly difficult.
It is, but you get to the point where you can actually,
the math works.
When you're that close and you build that relationship-based sale, you can see, okay, this is going to be my August buyer and this is going to be my September buyer. Sometimes they flip-flop and they surprise you.
Yeah, 100%.
Absolutely. And sometimes they drop out, but that's just another place where then we can plug that one that's coming in right behind or maybe speed them up. So there's a lot to be said for working those pipelines, but we got to work those CRMs. Leaders, you got to get in here and know those numbers and teach your salespeople to understand the numbers so they get the value of it too, because garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah, exactly.
Parting words, Kevin. I see we have a comment in the chat here.
Beth Lemon asked if the appointment to sale ratio is okay, but the lead to sale ratio is down. Does that mean we need to do better at getting actual appointments or just increasing website traffic? Without seeing the numbers, my assumption would be that means your lead to appointment ratio is down. And so one of the things that not knowing your specific situation, Beth, is recheck everything that you're doing in terms of requirements or qualifications that must be met in order to set those appointments. Because if your appointment to sale ratio is okay, in your words, or going up, but it's only doing that because you're only letting 2 people get past the online sales gateway. Again, that's not the purpose of online sales, is not to say only the best shall pass. Right. So if you're only letting 2 of them come through out of 100 because they meet the qualification levels, then certainly your appointment to sale ratio should be higher. So it's about balancing those 2 metrics. And one of the ways that sometimes we talk about with builders that helps is, what's your minimum appointment goal? Meaning until you hit 30, the online sales team keeps qualification levels lower. And then if your capacity as a sales team is I can only handle 30 in this time period, then incrementally past that, you start ratcheting up those qualification levels. But in today's environment, you probably don't have to worry about that. You're just, I would focus on getting more appointments and making sure that you're not creating extra steps or processes as part of
knowing her specific system. Hers are actually only down by a week. So again, not enough to panic. But actually I had that conversation with some of your leadership yesterday. So about what we needed to focus on there. And Kevin's right. I mean, so there's OSC appointments, but also are our salespeople scheduling enough appointments, and are they keeping them consistent? Because it's not, let's do 12 in 1 week and 3 the next, or 20 appointments in 1 week is you're not breathing. That's way too many. So, it should be, let's get these 5 first appointments every single week, and then your numbers will play out over time.
Yeah. I also, someone yesterday said that they had like 20 appointments in the last week, but only 7 price outs. And that was another one where I was like, tell me more about that. Because again, in today's environment, if someone's showing up and they show up to the point where you're qualifying it as an appointment, but we're not pricing something out or printing out a sheet on an inventory home and going through that, how do we not get there? That seems strange to me.
And a lot of that is dusting the rust off with your sales team. And maybe they're not seeing the buying signals because nobody's waving a check in their face, or, it's different. It's changed, and it just recently changed. It's going to take us some time to catch up back up to that. Well, Carol, parting thoughts, because we are way over time here.
I mean, my parting thought is really figure out what numbers you want to look at and watch them. And if you need help with those numbers from a sales perspective, call Kimberly. If you need really, really geeky help with those numbers, call Kevin. I would say we're kind of, we're good at Google Analytics here and watching marketing metrics at Denim, but I think Do You Convert really takes it to a whole new, really cool level. So I always like talking to Kevin because I always learn something too.
So
Thank
we
you so
lost,
much.
but
watch your numbers.
Sort of feedback on there, but
yeah, watch your numbers. And Carol's being humble, but Denim does a great job as well. My main thing again would be going back to patience and endurance, but be alert. And I think the biggest thing that I'm not seeing enough of still is competitive analysis, rapid competitive analysis. In a changing market environment, if a competitor adjusts their packaging, and by that I mean everything that goes into the customer interaction and product and price, and you are not aware that they changed it in 3 weeks, they could get 4 sales that you're not going to get until you realize that they adjusted price or changed options or came out with different messaging. And so you've got to be on competitive analysis like a hawk right now.
Absolutely. And you know what? People haven't been doing competitive analysis for 2 years.
I asked a room full of 300 people at the Builder Show, how many of you do regular competitive analysis? And I think there were about 3 or 4 hands that went up. To the point that Lori Tarver from Park Square got up and kind of was like, "Are you all serious?" She's just in the audience. She's like, "Is this real? We're not doing this."
Yeah, I mean that's what 1%, 3%. I mean that's pretty low.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think people are doing it. I think there's a lot of things that haven't happened in the last 2 years.
Well, maybe a future power. You need to remind them all how to do it.
How do you do one? Yes, absolutely.
How do you do one?
That's a very good idea.
I'm back to the basics.
I will send out to everybody who registered and who is on with us today. You will get the notes from this. You'll get the contact information. Reach out to any of us. We're happy to help you. This is something obviously very ambitious to cover in an hour and have you understand it. So we don't expect you to be an expert after an hour, but certainly want to give you the questions to ask because that's the place to start. But thank you, Kevin. It's always fun having you on. You and I usually get really fired up, and we did good today. We kept our cool. We didn't get all fired up, and we geek out over these numbers.
That's right.
And thanks for having me on your program recently. I think I have Carol on the program recently too.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, this is it in my mind. That everything that we've done and been through, this is our responsibility to help everyone who hasn't been through this type of environment before, and so. It is a lot of fun to be able to help. It's also, big responsibility, but we all take it seriously.
So, and thank you to everybody who joined us today and for the active chat that we have going on. We'll go through, if we missed something in the chat, we'll go through and we'll reach out to you directly too. So thanks again, everybody. Have a great day.
Happy July 4th.